Okay, welcome everyone to the Helm developer call. This is the developer call for January 18th, 2018. We'll be starting off with the announcements. And I think everyone here is a regular contributor, but in case you're catching up after, we're going to follow our normal structure of announcements, then stand-ups, and then some points of discussion. Right now there are 2 points of discussion on there, both from me. Is there anyone else who wants to add some discussion items on for after stand-up?
What are the current ones? Well, I'm trying to find them.
The current ones are talking about our use of test infra, and then I would put in another one in there about starting to build for other architectures and stuff now that we've kind of figured out some of the circle things.
2.8 for these.
Okay, I'll put that on there. Or technically, I'll have Fisher, since he's note-taking, put that on there. Okay, so any other points before we move on to announcements?
One other point, I guess it's on a related note. It might be interesting to talk about building the Helm client in the Tiller image while we're on the same discussion.
Yeah, we can add. Let's add that into the other architectures discussion as well. Okay, so for announcements, the Helm Dev Summit CFP acceptance letters have been sent out. We're just finalizing a few little details. It's going to be awesome. So be excited, promote it, and then we will have that schedule out soon. I'm hoping we get most of the confirmations back before we publish that schedule. So we'll be doing that. And I think that's it for announcements.
I got my first sneak peek at the schedule, and I am so excited. It looks so good.
I'm glad you like it too, Butcher. So we'll be publishing that soon, and then we'll have all the details out for paying for the ticket to come to the conference. It's super cheap. It's $75, I think, is what we decided on. So if your work cannot pay for that, my guess is they will not be paying for you to come to the conference anyway. So, but it's meant to be cheap. It's mostly all covered by sponsors. So we'll have that out too. Anyone who RSVP'd will get an email with that link. I think that's it. So we can go ahead and go into stand-ups if there's no other announcements. Okay. So I'll start off, since mine's related to the summit. I've been working pretty much primarily on summit stuff. I've responded to a few issues and stuff that I was already part of, but I haven't taken anything new with that. I'll be mostly working on that just finalizing some of those details this next week. And then I might ping some of you to run my Helm 3 lightning talk idea past for some review before I give it. And then I think that's it for me this week. And I am going to still be online. If anyone needs anything, they can ping me for PRs or whatever. So I'll go ahead and pass it to Farina since he's right next to me.
Hey. So I worked on a bug this week. It turns out that the Git version isn't populated in the default capabilities, so you can't use like semver against Git version inside of a template unless you do major, minor, and throw some stuff on there when you're dealing with ranges. It goes back to that greater than, less than string versus version issue. And Git version isn't populated in the default client, which affects lint and template. And so we don't have it there. And so I submitted a pull request to kind of add that in, hoping to get that in soon because that'll make it a little bit easier over on the charts repo to do some of that testing before 1.10 comes out. We can switch from string comparisons, which will mess with, 1.9 compared to 1.10 because the .9 is greater than .10 in string comparisons. And so there's that I worked on, and otherwise it's been stuff over in the charts repo where we're working on a little bit better stuff in testing and things like that. We want to actually grab all the logs for all the pods and actually all the containers in all pods and report that when things break to help with debugging. It's more stuff like that over there. That's it for me. So I guess I'll pass it off to Nikhil.
Hey guys, so this last week worked through with Matt Fisher, shadowed Matt Fisher as the issues are, and he took some time to walk me through how to do that and what I need to look at and things like that. So thanks a lot, Matt, for doing that. In addition to that, put together, as a reminder, I will be out next week making a trip to Nuremberg to evangelize Helm and let other SUSE teams know more how to use Helm and Kubernetes. So was putting together information for them. So I have a slide deck and some notes and things like that. And apart from that, I know Butcher said at some point that there was some information about like onboarding in a document somewhere, so wanted to just follow up with him to see if I can find that document so that I can make some progress towards that. That's me, and I will pass it on to Butcher since I mentioned him. So.
Yeah, we do need to find that document. We've been looking for it. I think Fisher was the last one who got onboarded with it, but. And we should announce for the record that Nick and Matt Farina were both officially elected as new core maintainers. I wrote a blog post about the 3 maintainers who have opted to become emeritus maintainers, and all 3 of them passed on thanks to everybody here and told me what a great time they had being part of this community. So I wanted to pass that all on to all of you. Yeah, last week I was gone because I too am doing more Helm promotion-y things. So I was actually with a customer last week talking about Helm, and it's just been really exciting on that front. I'm not really a salesy kind of person, but it's kind of nice to just get to tell somebody, yeah, we built something that can help you solve some of these problems. Yeah, this is how it's going to go. So that was a lot of fun. Adam and I did a bug hunt. I can't remember what that was, to try and nail down a bug in the Helm list logic related to rolling back and recovering from errors. I think that was last Thursday or Friday. So Adam can.
And thank you for finding that, because that has bitten me and so many people in the butt.
Oh, and Adam, we spent an hour and a half hunting for that, and both of us know that code backward and forward. So yeah, so that was fun. For us, kind of the thing I will be working on a little bit here and there is kind of exciting. We will be hiring Helm developers onto this team, and so I'm in the middle of getting that prepped up. So it's, of course, one of those things where if anybody is asking you guys, are there any jobs as a professional Helm developer, that there should be here here at Microsoft. So that to me is really exciting. So. I think that's about it. So my goal for the next couple of weeks, we have an offsite meeting coming up week after next, but I'm trying to get some of the tactical things in place so that we can really get a lot out of the Helm Summit in February, and also get Microsoft very engaged in continuing our efforts on Helm, because I think that's good for the entire community when we do it that way. So open to feedback on any of that kind of stuff, and feel free to point people toward me, or point yourselves toward me, or whatever. I think that's it for me. Adam, you want to
go? Yeah, sure. So this last week it was a little lighter for me. I took a longer weekend this weekend, just some PTO, and also on that note, I'm going to be out most of next week as well. So I'm just on vacation always now, just count on that. Yeah, so the big thing for last week, though, was what Butcher had just brought up. It was around the display for list displaying extra row items when there was a failed deployment. So that was actually the result of a different bug that me and Fisher had fixed a while back, of marking if a deployment went out after a deployment, if another deployment went out that was failed, it was marking the previous good deployments as superseded. So fixing that, the list filter was actually filtering based on the superseded. So because we had 2 that were not superseded anymore, it would display both records. So it was a very confusing bug to fix. So we actually fixed it on the client side. So I think it's a solid fix. If you see anything come up around that, let me know. Any other surprises? It's definitely true where you fix one bug, 2 more pop up. And then the last thing is the Helm release stuff, but we can talk about that after Fisher goes.
Adam, is that PR still, or I guess you and Matt Butcher paired on that and approved it already, so it's already been merged and it's in the Helm Canary releases, right?
Correct.
Okay. Good. Just wanted to make sure that I didn't need another review or something like that. So good to hear.
Who's
Should I
next?
do your stand up?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you give yours already?
All right.
Awkward silence.
I'll do my stand-up. So this last week, it was mostly around CFPs for Helm-related stuff. I've been mostly working off on other Microsoft projects. But for Helm-related stuff this last week, it was the CFP submissions, going through the review list and whatnot, making sure that was all done. And then Nikhil and I both were just pairing on the issue queue on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and just going through the onboarding stuff. Somewhere in the nebulous, that onboarding document was passed to myself and to Taylor, because we were the last people before to be onboarded, I believe. So I'm going to go through my Google Docs and whatnot and see if I can find that onboarding doc. We intended to PR it, but it never got in there. So I'll go find that, and if I can, I'll pass that off to you, Nick, for this week. Otherwise, I can take a look at, Matt Farina, I can take a look at your Git version PR and see if that's all good to go. And
I was actually going to say send me the onboarding doc too.
okay.
But all right, go take a look at the Git version too.
Okay.
Wait, I think I just found a draft of it.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
I don't know if this is the final version, but I think that's the draft of it.
Okay. Well, then otherwise, typical week. Going through, making sure the Helm 2.8 release goes well, just making sure that the, just kind of managing the issue queue and the community support and whatnot, and making sure that answers are being answered. Yeah, and then continuing on this discussion about test info and whatnot. So we'll have those discussions. I think that passes everyone else on the core maintainer team. I think I'm last.
Is there anyone else who wanted to report anything from the community who's on the call? No problem if you don't, just checking. Okay, then we will go ahead and move on to the discussion phase, which we're doing good. We almost have, this is like the earliest we've ended stand-ups in a while. Okay, so first on, I'm gonna save the testing thing for the end because the other two should be pretty quick. First off, let's just start with the Helm 2.8 release because I think that's the quickest. Adam?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if anybody has any blockers for 2.8. Otherwise, I think we should go ahead and just cut it.
I'd be curious if my bug fix for Git version could be merged in, or we have a path on that, because that would be useful for the charts repo.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. I think that's probably good. And it falls in the idea that after we cut an RC that we're just accepting bug fixes. I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Okay, then we're only waiting for Farina.
And it's waiting to be reviewed. And if we deem it no, because we want to go in a different direction, I'm fine with that. But if this quick fix works and is acceptable, then that's all.
Okay, so if we get that merged in by the end of the week, would we be cutting this beginning of next week, Adam?
Yep.
Okay. So let it be written.
Who's going to cut the release then?
I don't see Fisher raising his hand.
I'd be happy to, Adam. You cut the RC so I could cut the actual
Okay.
region.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in a cabin with no Wi-Fi, so.
I was going to say Adam might not be the most reliable. Yeah.
And
okay.
Fisher, if I'm available, just ping me when you're going to do it, because I want to make sure I ghost it and get a little bit better. I know we wrote up the document for that, but I do want to follow along just so you can be careful.
Okay,
I was actually going to say the same thing. Could I follow along and learn too?
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
invite us all.
Room style, and we'll set it up on Monday or Tuesday or whatever works.
We're all going to cut the release.
No, we're all going to watch him do it. And if anything goes wrong, we got lots of fingers to point blame. Matt did it. But that'll be confusing just to say.
I was going to say, saying that doesn't really help much in this group.
Okay.
Although probably accurate.
We'll so we'll cut that next week. Fisher, if you can note that down. That's next thing is the building further architectures. In the notes, there's the link. I'll pull it up and put it in the chat for people who are lazy like me and don't like opening the doc sometimes. I'm just getting that open. This is the specific pull request I'm referring to, but I mean, it opens the floodgates to support all types of architectures. Along with this is the idea of including the Helm binary inside of the tiller image. And now that we've kind of figured out some of the stuff around Circle and moved to Circle 2, we wanted to revisit the idea of allowing this stuff in there and finally supporting instead of having, I think, is it Lackey who always builds the image of Helm built in or whatever, and actually having it be official if we want to do that. So what are people's thoughts?
Well, my first thought, and I know there's an issue out there, is to have Helm in a separate image from Tiller. Is there a reason to put it in the Tiller image? Because if you have a Helm image, you could pull that into CI/CD tool chains and all kinds of other stuff like that, where you don't need Tiller with it. And so I would like Helm in an image separate from Tiller.
I could see both. I'm just thinking, like, from the testing I would do, like if I wanted to do some like integration testing or like E2E testing, I'd want both of them. I mean, I guess I could install it in the fake cluster I spin up. I don't know. I'm not like heavily biased towards one or the other.
It is also sometimes useful to be able to kubectl exec into the tiller pod and run a Helm command there to rule in network connections and things like that. But I don't have strong feelings one way or another. If we did put it in the same pod, we could look in the future at making it possible to fetch the Helm client from the tiller pod, as in use a curl bash it off of there or something like that, which might be interesting too. But that's way out there feature request, not really practical.
I know we've had a number of issues like this in past come up, and it's always gotten voted against, so maybe we should look up those.
Yeah, when I'd asked before, the reason is that Circle CI was timing out on doing some of this, and that stopped it. But I think those issues are gone now.
Okay, yeah, I just don't remember why we always.
Well, and also, I think it was just the amount of time it was taking, not so much that it was timing out, because you can configure the timeout for each individual build step in Circle to be however long you want. So I think it was just that, but I think we've like gotten it down to like be a little bit more parallelized, and things might be able to work out better for doing this.
Yeah, because imagine using something like Drone or GitLab CI, where your step is to bring in the Helm image and then say, use this image, execute these commands inside of it to fetch your chart and then deploy it, right? It fits nicely into some of those workflows, and you don't need Tiller there. But if they were in the same image, I guess it would work as long as it was communicated clearly how you would do it.
I'm going to say just how I would think we go forward. Let's split it out. It's easier to combine it back together than it is to split it out later. Let's split it out if we're going to do it, because anyone could just spin up if you wanted to troubleshoot like we were talking about, you just spin up a Helm pod inside of the kube system namespace or wherever Tiller is running, and then just connect to it from there.
The other consideration as well is that people have been requesting multiple architectures of the Helm client. So like for ARM or for PPC 164E or whatever that architecture is.
Yeah.
Is that 9 or something? that will also expand the tiller image to be much larger. So if people actually just want tiller on their, like if you're doing a Helm init and suddenly you're noticing that your image has bumped up from like, what's the current size? I don't know it, but I'd imagine it would add quite a few megabytes if we're like bundling not just the Helm client, but now we're also adding multiple different architectures that are compiled inside the image. Or those might have to be compiled as different Docker images.
Well, yeah,
But
they'd have to be
I don't think
different
we
Docker
built-
images. I don't think we'd need to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we just need the normal Linux one for the Docker image, and then we compile the actual Helm binaries for other stuff. So I think the decision on that is, so we can move on to the testing thing. Yes, on building a separate Helm image now, and then the other thing was allowing other architectures. Are we okay with that, or do we not want to allow that right now?
I think the one thing is we use Gox to do the cross compiling, and we'd have to make sure it supports it. Like its ARM support is kind of weak at the moment. The one pain point though is that I'm now a maintainer on that, and so we can either go fix it up, which we need to do, and I need a reason to go do that, or we could go to something like Go Release, which is another thing, but that does more work than just do the cross compiling. It does some more of the packaging and the release stuff, and I don't know that we need it. But with Gox, we just have to make sure the architecture is supported over there. And if it's not, just tie off with me and we'll make sure it all gets working. And ARM support is broken over there.
Yeah, and Go Release, that's like a highly opinionated thing, right? Where we would probably have to change some of our workflow if we went to something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And we can fix Gox pretty easily now that I can go change those. So just tie off with me on any of the stuff that doesn't work. But otherwise, that sounds good to me.
Okay. So then we can go ahead and go forward with that PR that's already opened out another architecture, and then add them as people come. I think we just allow those people to add it in as the community wants it. If we have like a strong request, one of us could implement it. But like basically, if someone's like, "Hey, we really need ARM," and they're like, "Here's a PR," then sure, just send that in. So I think that's how you could probably go forward with that.
One other thing that we should note. How do we procure that second Docker image? Is it as simple, like we've already got full control over the Kubernetes Helm Google Container Registry, and it's just simply changing Circle CI to build and push a Helm image? Or do we need to have someone who has access to the Google Container Registry credentials to create a repository? Because certain
No, we should be good.
act differently.
Or do we push it to a whole new registry like Docker Hub?
Now we're getting into politics.
Sorry,
We're not going to touch
sorry.
that here.
We'll bring that up in the issue queue. Yeah.
Oh no. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the test infra. I'm going to have to drop at 10, but I do think this discussion might bleed over a little bit. Essentially, and I'll need to get the summary. Essentially, Matt talked last week about using the test infrastructure, and then I saw a big conversation in the contributor channel, the Contribx or whatever that channel is in Slack, and I kind of piped up and said what was going on and like how we had some things that I would get a decision back to them about how we're going to use test infra going forward. And so I think the main thing is having Matt kind of fill us in on the different things we'd be able to do with it, and then deciding what we'd like to do, and then going forward from there.
So I can fill in on whatever. Let me pull up a screen here. I can give an overview of some of the stuff that's available. Find my tab.
Okay, so I don't interrupt you later. I'm going to drop now. Butcher, I'm going to toss over the baton to you so you can handle the rest of the meeting, and I'll check back with the notes and people online afterwards to kind of give the report back out to the test infra team. So anyway, and then don't forget to choose an issue, Maharaja.
All right, thanks.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye. All right, I'm going to share my screen real quick. If it lets me. All right. So the test infra stuff has a few areas to it. And there's a repo, Kubernetes-test infra is where you can find out all the details on it. And most of the stuff these days, they're sticking into a tool called Prow. Prow is where all the plugins are, and you can see what's configured for a specific repo here. You can have certain things turned on per repo, and then some are turned on across the whole org. And so you can see, and you can actually, so this URL here, prow.ks.io /plugin-help.html. It's not easy to find. We'll get you to this page. You can actually see what's enabled today. Now, you don't have to use it or not. It's up to you. But they do have some tools that you can opt into. And the idea around this is there's a lot of stuff you want to do, but you have to have push rights or write rights to be able to do it. And you don't want to give that to everybody. And so most of this is targeted around how do we make that easier or automate some of it. Some of it's pretty simple, like CLA. We know how CLA handling works. The CLA handling actually looks to see if the bot passes and then applies the label. So you can do things like query on the label, see where it's not there, things like that, and do some other work. But then there's stuff like assign. If you want to assign or unassign or CC somebody, which requests a review, you can do that on everything. And so somebody doesn't have to have write access or any special powers. They can go do this as long as they are a member of the Kubernetes org or a collaborator on the repo. That's one of the things that's normally checked for. So there's assigning. You can actually go linting. I don't know that we'll ever do that because that's automatically in CI. You can heart things. You can do things like tell it to put on hold. And hold is important, mostly if you use the automatic merging, because that'll tell the merge box don't actually merge it. It's on hold, but it allows you to do that. Label command lets you control certain areas for kinds, priorities, things like that. These are for the labels that are on there, but they're also for, and you see labels, it's remove dash, or you got area committee, so you can do, /kind bug, and it does the kind bug, not the top level bug one. It's targeted around the main ones that are included across, unless you use the same pattern. But it lets people apply labels without actually having write access, and that was the reason that they did that. Let's see, some of it is for milestones, if you're going to manage milestones. Again, this is really targeted for those who don't have write access. Work in progress, this looks to see if something's work in progress because it doesn't have that, and then it automatically applies a label to it. It's just designed to be a helper, and it stops the automation from merging. Yucks, right? It'll actually tell a joke. So there's things like that, but there's a whole bunch more that you can do out there. And so, for example, on the charts repo, we have added some stuff, and like the specific one we've added is we've got trigger. Oh, we got Slack events. I didn't even realize that. We've got blunderbuss. And so what blunderbuss does here is this one says, all right, owners files can be scattered throughout your repository. And those owners files can have reviewers and approvers, and they don't have to be the same. And what it'll look for is if code is touched, and it'll look at the owners files leading up to it, because owners files apply to that directory and all subdirectories. It'll look at the reviewers, and it can automatically request a reviewer for you. And that's what blunderbuss does, right? And so, our process doesn't necessarily need this, but for us, like in the charts repository, this means that the chart owners, if there's an owner's file, will automatically be requested to review a PR that relates to their chart. That turned out to be really useful for us because now I don't have to go through and CC people. The automation does it for me on PRs to kind of say, hey guys, come take a look at this. We also have something called tide turn on here, and that ends up using the looks good to me. And so as the owners files, we use the owners files to say, hey, if you got an owner's file, you can merge changes to your own chart. As long as it passes CI, and then we use a whole bunch of CI. Now, the neat thing for us is the Kubernetes-related CI, which is basically jobs running in a Kubernetes cluster and normal Kubernetes artifacts, and you basically pull in an image and execute some commands inside of it. If you're used to CI systems like GitLab CI or Drone or those things, kind of like what we do with Circle, it's the same kind of thing. Those will be re-triggered before the automation does the merge. And so like on the charts repository, we'll actually, right before it's merged, the automation will say, okay, they may have incremented the chart version before, but if other PRs were merged that incremented it, does the new increment increase the chart version or not? And we can check that beforehand, and the automation will say, oh, nope, it doesn't pass anymore. You need to fix that before it can be merged. And so we can check those right before merge by rerunning some of that automation on the cluster. And so this is some of the stuff that we have there. If you actually go to the test infra repo, this is, they say they want to change it, but the config for all of the different kinds of things is in config YAML and
And
plugin
there's like,
YAML.
what, 50 lines in that file?
Config YAML? No, like 50,000. So this is kind of more old school Jenkins style. Oh, I'm sorry, it is 25,000, and then the plugin is only 243. The plugin's kind of, it's mostly here's a plugin and then here's the repos it applies to. That's what most of it is. And so you can see the approved plugin. Here's the repos it applies to. And you can actually see there's implicit self-approve. That means you approve of something if you're the author and you're in the approvers file. Some of it, like the Kubernetes org, actually requires you to have an issue linked to a PR before it can be merged. And so you can see there's some different things here. The config file is actually where you get into the detailed config on everything. And that is just massive because everything's in one place. This is all of the jobs, all the CI, all of that in one place. And it's more like old school Jenkins, right? You've got to keep that separate from the repos. They say they want to move some of it to be in repo, but that hasn't happened in that direction yet. They really need more bodies and more opinions over on the test infra side to make changes and feedback. And they're mostly around testing Kubernetes, and this has worked for Kubernetes, especially as they break up repos, because and they have to build multiple binaries. So some of this, it works. What kind of questions? I did a really brief intro, and I probably have a whole lot of context that I didn't share because I'm trying to be quick on time. What kind of questions do y'all have about what's there? And
So is there a way to opt in or out of particular versions of this? I mean, one of my concerns is if it's all centrally managed, one plugin can implement new features that we wouldn't be aware of and that they would just suddenly start happening in our repo, like label-based bots or things like that. If they add support for a new label and it's a label we already have, stuff like that. Is there a way to kind of version pin or anything like that? Or is there even a method for learning about that kind of stuff?
no. No, there isn't. And everything is obviously constantly in flux over here as well. There are discussions happening about how much of this should be opt-in versus passed down on you, and that is for there's a meeting called Contribax, and we're kind of defaulting to have that over there because that's really about the contributor experience is what they're saying. But Contribax and Test Infra are the two places that are having this. Kind of the implementation side of these things is the Test Infra folks. And I think the policy side of how we should approach this is the Contribax folks. That meeting is every other Wednesday. And I think next Wednesday is the next one. And it's headed up by folks like Paris Pittman and those folks who are really concerned with the community and the user experience, right? They're not the folks who are out there trying to code this stuff and you go, how do I figure out how to use it? Like the first time I had to go learn how to use the merge bot automation, it's called Tide. There wasn't a doc I could go read. I went and I read the code to figure it out, right? Because that's what I had. And they're heads down, trying to write code, trying to solve problems, and I appreciate that. But as far as the policy goes on how do we roll this out to people, make it self-service and opt-in versus put it on folks, those conversations are happening over there and how you approach it. And so I would suggest folks go bug them and give your 2 cents because they are very open to hearing those things. And they understand that the experience could use improving. Did that answer it?
Yeah. So some of my concern around this is for the Helm project, at least, it would be solving problems that we don't have yet. Our workflow for people contributing is actually very simple and straightforward, where we don't need a lot of this automation. A lot of the automation we need is just around builds and tool chain kind of stuff, where we have a set of core maintainers who can merge stuff, and that's the process. We don't need all this extra bells and whistles.
Yeah, a lot of this would actually be making the process more complicated and thereby thwart.
I think it would increase the barrier to entry to contribute to Helm.
And so in the community meeting last week, we talked about that. The community meeting that actually started a few minutes ago. We went into that whole conversation, and I pointed out that it's regularly talked about that Kubernetes is hard to figure out how to contribute to and navigate. right? And a bunch of this extra tooling we've had has helped us with the mono repo structure we've put in place here. But a lot of the smaller projects here, like Helm and we'll say Minikube and Dashboard, may not need a whole bunch of this tooling for whatever reason, right? And it seems like we're taking the complexity, putting that in place and handing it down. And Guinevere was on the call, and she suggested, maybe we start with something slim and small, and instead of starting with the most complex, start with something slim and small, and then layer on top of that and let people layer in what they need, right? And so you can kind of pick and choose what will help you. Kubernetes will probably be the most complicated, but lots of projects could be much simpler. And that was kind of her way of describing maybe a different approach to handle this kind of thing. And that goes along with kind of the opt-in idea. We can build tools and we can opt into those, right? And so that's what she was thinking. And I'm hoping that kind of philosophy. But if more folks maybe pipe up in Contribex, that would help them look at that kind of thinking. And I have trouble attending Contribex, so don't expect me to be a loud voice there. I have the AppDev working group at the same time.
Yeah, I also have conflicts at that same time.
Okay, so that's what's there. You can actually see what's configured for the Helm repo in the plugin help. See, I don't remember what it is now. And it's things like the assign plugin, the CLA checking. Most of it y'all don't ever even use anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yucks, you can tell some jokes. I think that maybe the most useful for us might be assign. If somebody wants to assign something to themselves and don't have write access, I think this gives them the ability to do that, as long as they're members of the Kubernetes org. And to assign something to yourself, it's just /assign. Yeah. And if you want to assign it to somebody else, it's /assign space their username. So I could go, well, anybody could go use this to assign all of their work to Technosophos if they wanted to. This one might be useful. I don't know how many of the others are or how many there are in total. You can go look at the plugin and all the other plugins. Each a plugin is a directory here. One of the nice things is, are you all familiar with DevStats? DevStats or kdes.devstats.cncf.io. It helps you have all kinds of dashboards on what's going on with Kubernetes and Kubernetes related stuff. It's constantly being iterated on, but you could do something like look at the approvers histogram, right, and give you the history of who's approved stuff. And then you can look at repo groups, right? And part of the reason you'll see this is who's in the Helm group. Well, it's not picking it up because you're not using the mergebot automation. And so you're not picked up in this. And so that is one of the things, I don't know that I care, but when you use the stuff, these tools are being kind of designed around some of it. And this must be who's been merging stuff to the charts repo, is my guess. Although I think there's more of that. I'm not sure why. This number of reviews doesn't seem right. I'll have to go look. We might not be reviewing well and just doing comments over there over the last week instead of reviews. I'd have to go look at how this works. But yeah, you can see some of this, like approvers, who's approved stuff, what projects. There's a whole bunch of charts. If you haven't been over here, there's a lot of interesting information.
All right, we're closing in on out of time. Do we have anything else we need to go through today?
That was all that was on the discussion list. So if there's anything else, anyone, please feel free to bring it up.
Right, we got
issues ours and
yep, stuff like that. Anybody want to work on triaging the issue queue next week?
I can take a look at that since I have fresh knowledge from Fisher on how to do it. So,
okay. Trial by fire.
just FYI, I'll be in Europe, so it might be at odd hours that you would see comments and things like that. So just a heads up.
That's all right.
If you need pairing or anything like that to figure out, or if you have any questions, we're all available to help and all that too. So
cool. Yeah, if there's issues that I'm not 100% sure on or the response, I might just reach out to you for a couple of them just to
certainly
get my toes wet. So
it's been about 3 months since I last led a Helm meeting, so I'll lead the meeting next week. It's been a really nice 3 months off. Thanks. Anybody want to do notes next week? All right. Well, assign it to Michelle since she didn't come today. Is there anything else we have to vote on? Oh, the new core maintainers, you should open a PR to add your name to the owner's file. That's sort of the rite of passage for that. And maybe next week we can talk about if one of the two of you would like to take ownership of the onboarding document, then we can kind of turn the fiasco into something positive going forward. This doesn't happen again.
Sure.
All right. Okay. And sure, Nick, you and I can talk about that whenever it's convenient for you and brainstorm about it. Maybe we should just put it in the docs section of the repo or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't had a chance to look through it all particularly. I don't know what of it is public knowledge versus not. So we can chat and figure that out. So,
okay, that sounds great. Okay, anything else? All right, look forward to talking to you all next week. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Matt, for that long intro there to this thing that's been largely very confusing and opaque to us. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
See y'all later.
Yeah, later.